Set up again here. I'm Carrie for gluten's sake, and I have another interview with Mike from the Celiac Project. I am really excited to get to interview Mike. Hey, how's it going? Just turning on my AC. So it's really fun because Mike generally is the one interviewing people. He has a podcast, which you may or may not know about, but the Celiac Project. And they interview Mike and Cam together, interview all kinds of people and tell celiac stories, which is so fun. So, hey Jess, how's it going? And I got to be a guest on their podcast. I don't remember when it was. It's been a bit, maybe January, February, I don't know, or before then. So that was really fun. And now I get to interview Mike. So Mike's going to jump on and I'll invite him. And then we will do an interview together. Hello, everyone. We're just getting started. I was just chatting with Mike, so he's going to jump on. Hi, Susan. Hi, Olivia. How's it going? Okay, I don't think I can jump into my messages. I don't think Mike's done a live before. Morning. Yes, it is. Gosh, what time is it here? 7:30? What time is it there? 11? Good. I'll have to check out the podcast. What's it called? The podcast is called The Celiac Project. It is available, I think, everywhere you can find podcasts. So, yeah, The Celiac Project. And they do all kinds of great interviews. And there's also a movie they put together. So check it out. Oh, yay, so many hearts. They have just great people as guests on their show, so many different people that they've interviewed, and it was really fun to get to be on their show. So is there a website? Yeah, there's also a website. I think it's just theceliacproject.com or something similar. Just Google The Celiac Project or go to Mike's Instagram, which is The Celiac Project, and it's probably linked in his bio. I can't tell you for sure. I'm hoping Mike is not having a problem. Let's see if I can... Oops. Okay. I don't know how to go. You're welcome. 10:30, Olivia says. Yeah, cool. I don't think I can look at my inbox while I'm live. Can I? Mike was just on my other lives, so I know he knows how to watch, and I told him what to do. But he's not popping up. So, we'll give him one more minute. We were just chatting, so if not, I might have to make sure he's not confused and go into my inbox. But I know he's ready. So, what else can I tell you while we're just giving him a minute? Okay, so definitely check out the Celiac Project. And I just did an interview an hour ago, or so, hour and a half ago, with Heather, who is a dietitian, and super helpful information in terms of our conversation around just self-care and really looking after yourself if you have an autoimmune disease. She does not have celiac. She has a different autoimmune disease, which I cannot tell you the name of. But she's allergic to wheat and works with celiac clients. And it was just a great conversation. I think that needs to be prioritized a little bit more about making sure you're sleeping enough, having enough water, really looking after yourself when you have an autoimmune disease, because you are more prone to get another autoimmune disease. You're prone to get sick if you don't take care of yourself. So just things like that. What tips would you give? What tips for what? I would love to know specifically what you mean with what tips. Happy to answer. And then I might have to pop off and pop back on because I don't see Mike. And I know he's available and we're going to do a great interview. So why don't, yay, there's Mike. Okay, perfect. I'm going to invite Mike on. And, all right, I'm inviting you, Mike. So it'll go live in just a second. It's connecting.
Hey, Carrie.
Hey, how are you, Mike?
I'm so good. I'm sorry. I think that I was like on watching your Have you been waiting for a long time?
Just a few minutes. I was like, maybe I need to pop off and see what's going on
Okay.
because I knew you were there.
I'm showing that I am not the Instagram maven that you are.
You know, it's a learning process. We all had to do it for the first time. And it's been fun because honestly, a lot of people I've interviewed have like never gone live with someone. So they don't know what to do.
I've done a little Facebook Live, but never Instagram Live. So I was like watching the last one. I was like, okay, so pie
Well,
on the face. Anyways, I'm a little embarrassed. So
no,
I'm
it's
showing,
confusing because I also have another live in my stories. So
okay.
yeah.
How are you tonight? Sorry to freak you out there. I hope I didn't freak you out.
No, I was just like, I know you're there, but I couldn't get into my inbox while being on live. So
Got you. Well, I hope we didn't lose whoever wants to listen to this. But how are you
no,
tonight?
it's good.
I mean, this morning.
I'm good. Yeah, I'm on my second cup of coffee. Life's
Okay.
good. Yeah. How
Very
are
nice.
you?
I'm very well. Thank you for having me. I love what you're doing with this. I love that you've had so many people on. As someone who puts out, you know, a podcast a week, I can't do the math of what you've done in such a short time, but it's very inspiring. So I'm really impressed with it, and they've been great. I've picked up what I could, and really enjoying it. So thank
Oh,
you.
well, thank you. Well, while you weren't on, I was just plugging your podcast saying everyone needed to
Oh,
check it out. So,
okay. Thank you.
yeah,
Thank you.
of
And again,
course.
I next time I won't leave you hanging there. But what do you want to talk about
No
today?
worries. Well, let's just start. Why don't you introduce yourself, tell people a bit about you? I just mentioned your podcast and how awesome it was, but you can speak to it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. So my name is Michael Frolichstein. I have celiac. I was diagnosed approximately 10 years ago. Before the podcast, I decided I'm a filmmaker by trade, and so I was sort of dumbfounded because I was sick basically all of my life and felt like there really has to be there. I didn't know about celiac until I was diagnosed at 40, and I was sick from the time that I was in my teens. And I thought, this is really terrible, and someone has to do something about it. And I thought, well, I guess it should be me. I just felt this sort of pull. I don't know, this what's the word? Just was inspired to raise awareness any way that I could, sort of give people the feeling what it was like to have celiac disease, to raise awareness. Got the opportunity to talk to many of the top doctors in the celiac world. So that's where the whole Celiac Project thing started, because I just felt like I didn't want anybody else to suffer the way that I had for, like I say, basically my whole life, for 30 years or so. So made the documentary, and then knew that the documentary was just a start of a conversation, and knew that I wanted to do something else that allowed me to kind of talk to great people like you. You've been on the podcast. You were amazing. And so talk to people in the celiac world, and also find times to kind of explore different topics that a film that's an hour long won't allow you to do, right? So we interview folks like you who are amazing, who travel. We've had great doctors on, and then my amazing co-host Cam Weiner. Uh, we met because he came to a screening locally. He's local to Chicago as I am, and happened to come to a screening of my documentary and met me afterwards. And if you're out there, Cam, shout out to Cam. He's amazing. And we just sort of met at a Barnes and Noble and I realized that's what I need for the podcast. Like I didn't even, as the people who came on who said, "Where's this guy that you're supposed to be interviewing?" I know my way around the internet and this and that, but he was the sort of a podcast freak, and so I hadn't really even listened to a podcast when I started the Celiac Project podcast, but I thought this will be the best medium to do to carry on what was started with the documentary. And so we have tomorrow 173rd episode comes out. We've been doing this almost 4 years now. So it's just something. I know when Wednesday comes, there will be the Celiac Project podcast will be there, and it's because of wonderful people like you who've joined us, and wonderful people like you who listen to it, and so people seem to be getting something out of it. So as long as people are getting out of it, I will keep doing it, and Cam will keep doing it.
Awesome. I mean, I'm a huge fan. I need to listen to your latest episode. I saw several people sharing it this past week on certification of the gluten-free process. That was your latest one, right?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, we talked to the founder of Goodman Gluten Free, and he told us how he got into it, and yeah, sort of this stringent process. We go into a little bit of that, but yeah, it's an interesting show.
Yeah, so I definitely want to check that out. And I think that that's what I love about this medium, right? Like you're able to share stories in a way that, like, you're in Chicago, I'm in Vietnam, you can have a conversation. People can listen to it whenever, with a podcast, like, oh, I can listen to it tomorrow or I can listen to it next year. It's still going to be there. And it's a great resource.
Right. And we found a lot of people, I can't think of, it's so weird to think that a lot of people email and they say, I've been binging the podcast. And it's an interesting thing with podcasts where people, like you said, hopefully most everything we talk about is pretty topical, whether you listen to it now or you listen to it in a couple years, like you said. And it's amazing too, because, back to like when I started the film, I thought, I was diagnosed, and when you're diagnosed, I can't speak for you, but a lot of us feel like we're in this bubble. Like we get this diagnosis, we may have, there are times where I saw celiac on the internet when I was like feeling all these different symptoms, and I was like, well, I can't have that because when I'm not feeling well, I eat a sleeve of saltines, but I was so sick and everything was so damaged that it didn't matter what I ate. But you get diagnosed and you kind of feel like very alone, and you think, am I the only one sort of going through this? And what was interesting, I reached out, I found people basically through Facebook and Twitter, and started to connect with them who had celiac. And I found that the people that I was talking to had much more dramatic stories and much more sort of harrowing, like hospitalizations and unnecessary surgeries. And it was then that the seed was planted that we have to kind of share our stories in order to see that A, we're not alone, and B, like there are people, not only that are out there that have it just like us, but with celiac that all the different symptoms and everything can be so vast and everything that I just sort of got really sort of set on, I want to tell and help all the people that I can meet tell their story. And that's why the documentary, and then the podcast after that. So, yeah.
I love it. So I was telling people before, and we'll share again, but Celiac Project, just everywhere you can find podcasts, correct? You're on Stitcher,
Correct.
iTunes,
We're
all
on
the things.
Stitcher. Actually, this week I just found we're on iHeartRadio, if that's somewhere you go. Yeah, Stitcher, of course, iTunes, Google Play, all the places that you find your podcast.
Well, and I love how passionate you are. I'm the same. It's like I really found a love for sharing kind of the 100% gluten-free stores and restaurants, a lot of their stories is what I've focused on the last year. And I interviewed Allie from Sweet Allie's last week, and
Love Sweet Alley.
I tagged them in your post. They wrote me back last night. They're like, "We love Mike," and I said, "I do too."
Yes, that's awesome. It's so funny you bring them up because I think this week my daughter through Advocate Children's Hospital here is going to a cooking class there. So we're really looking forward to that. She's amazing. They do such great stuff. Really
Yes.
big fans. Yeah.
So, does your daughter have celiac?
Yes, she does. She was diagnosed at 3.5.
Okay. Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
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 Glad.
And my go on.
No, I was going to say glad you found out so early. I mean, hard, but
Yes.
great.
Exactly. And it was because I had been diagnosed and then, it's sort of talked about more in the documentary. And we've had my nephew Sam on before on the podcast, but the documentary uh, really sort of the production of it took off because my nephew Sam got diagnosed and he was mostly asymptomatic. And so my family has sort of I'm the guy that was sort of suffering all my life. We caught my daughters really quickly. And then my nephew was in, his late teens, but had no villi, sort of off the charts, TTG, and almost no symptoms. So it was then that the focus of the film, I didn't want to make the focus of the film me and my family, but sometimes as a documentarian, obviously you have to follow where the story's taking you. So that's sort of where the story was taking us. And it worked out because I get a lot of comments where the cool thing about the podcast is a lot of people who've reached out to me hadn't ever heard of other asymptomatic people until they heard us talk about Sam and all of that. So it's been a really great platform to share, like we often talk about. Most of us know those harrowing stories where you're so sick and don't know what it is, but then there's the other side where people have sort of the silent or asymptomatic celiac. So it's been all across the board, very interesting journey.
Yes, yes. Well, and I think it's so important, for people to have those resources because, like, I was talking to somebody who's a mom of an asymptomatic teenager and was really struggling with how do you get a teenager to commit to a gluten-free lifestyle when they have no symptoms? Like, that's hard,
Right,
really hard.
right, right. Right. And the doctors are sort of mulling over, I've read a lot about, you know, doctors have differing views of, because it does create so much emotional sort of stress to live this way that when, that they're still studying it and there's still a lot to be learned about the asymptomatic stuff. So it's really, really interesting.
Yes. So you guys have been doing this for 4 years. Like that's incredible.
Yeah, just
A,
about.
and
Yeah.
then B,
Thank you.
like what do you feel like is your biggest takeaway after 4 years of interviewing people around celiac? Like obviously there's a million, but like what do you share now maybe that you didn't know 4 years ago before starting this?
That's an excellent question, Carrie. My biggest takeaway, it's funny. I was at my daughter's softball game the other night, and someone in our community said that she listens to the podcast from time to time, and I was taken aback. I was really happy. She wasn't really in a gluten-free life or anything, but she said, how do you, when we started, I didn't know where it would go. I didn't know if we'd do, 10 episodes, 100 episodes. I didn't maybe think of 1,000 episodes, but I thought, well, we'll go until we run out of steam. We'll go until we run out of stories. And I think my biggest takeaway is I think that we will have stories as long as we keep the podcast going, because there's every guest I've had on, from you to, we've had our buddy Aaron Smith on a number of times, and gonna have Jessica Hansen on, who just got married, and everybody has a unique story, and every time we think we've told every story, and every time we think that every sort of subject matter within this has been depleted, more pop up. So I realize that there's a lot more stuff that we need to get to. People have been emailing me about things like DH, dermatitis herpetiformis, and I realize we haven't really devoted a full show to that. And I have that myself, and it's weird that we haven't done that show. So I think that there's always topics, there's always amazing people out there. So and it's always different. So um, I have sort of I don't know if it's in my training as a filmmaker. It's like I think one of the things that was hard for me to like why I haven't done a lot of live stuff, and I'm really glad that you had me on because I want to get out of my comfort zone and do more live stuff, is that I, by sort of training and by nature, am a director and editor.
Hmm.
So my podcast doesn't go out live, and we don't take out sort of subject matter. I take out all my ums and ahs that I'm giving to you today, and stuff like that. But it's really great. We live in a world where things are sort of more free flowing, and I hope as the podcast grows, I want to get into stuff that's more like this, more like being having the podcast, but having more live check-ins and doing more sort of spontaneous stuff. Because the one thing that's sort of hard, the flip side of your question, sort of one of my takeaways is like, Cam and I will talk about something and it'll be really time sensitive. And so I'll try to rush it out, but sometimes I'll have a bunch in the queue. And so if we're talking about Celiac Awareness Month, but it's
Yeah.
hard to get that stuff up. Sometimes there's stuff like the immediacy of this is so great. And so I need to learn to embrace that, because what I was saying is, as a filmmaker, and I worked as an editor in TV for years, there's that part of me that wants to like have every syllable right and every scene right before I put anything out. But I think this is very liberating, and this is a really great way to that we can connect live and share it with people, and have people commenting. It's really cool. So I'm just, I don't want to age myself. I feel like an old fuddy duddy, but this is really cool. And so what I hope sort of grows out of us doing this for so long is that it grows in other ways. I want to work more video into it, because I started, with the documentary doing video. So we're working on different ways to make this not just a documentary and a podcast, but sort of a whole multimedia experience, I guess.
Do you have a YouTube channel?
I do. It currently, we don't have much up there. So, but that's one of the things in the works. Yeah.
Because I was gonna
Yeah.
say, like, you guys video record your guests, so or do you not?
We don't, for the most part. We record on Skype, but we just are recording the audio right now.
Ah.
I envision a day where we're doing more of the video recording. I went away from that because initially when we started, it felt like just getting like, this is amazing. You're in Vietnam and I'm in Chicago, and we're like, I hopefully crystal clear to everybody.
Yeah.
But I've had times in Skype where someone was like down the street from me recording, not literally down the street, but
Yeah,
like
yeah.
a city over or two, and it like going in and out and everything. So I figured, let's get the audio right. Also, I'm in my sort of home studio now, and it's not. I have visions of bigger things with, with nice cameras and things set up. So hopefully that's something we can get going at some point. But yeah.
I love that. Well, and I mean, there's different things for different audiences, right? Like there's an element of an edited podcast that's amazing. And there's nothing like, there's no shame in that. There's nothing bad or wrong about that. And then there's also something liberating and great about a live stream and an unedited version of something too. I think they serve different purposes.
Exactly. And to your point, I'd love to envision a time where we have the podcast stays as it is, and Cam and I have played with doing some Facebook Live stuff and just working more of that in and making it, yeah, a different kind of experience. I have all sorts of ideas that I hope I can get to. I want to do sort of travel, like a sort of the road film kind of thing of celiac, some other things like that, and hopefully we can get all that going. It just takes time. And
Oh, there. Sorry,
uh,
what did you say?
I'm still there.
Okay, good. You said it takes
Oh,
time and then you
it
cut
just
off.
takes. Yes, yeah. My phone is like somehow running out of juice.
Oh
That's
no.
another thing I have to upgrade. Anyways, it'll be fine.
Okay.
I have a power thing going now. So
Okay,
yeah.
okay. Yeah, well, I love that. I mean, I'm the same. I have like a bazillion ideas all the time and I have to, rein it in a little bit, make sure I'm focusing on the right things. But, coming back to the stories, like, and people resonate with stories, right? Like, we all want to know we're not alone. We all want to know that there's resources to help us, that, that we're going to get through it. And that's why I think we all connect with the stories so much, because you see yourself in the other person.
Exactly, exactly. It's like relatable, and that's what I was saying. It's like I felt like when I was making the documentary, I reached out to people in my community, and it was weird because I thought, is anybody going to relate to my story? And then when I started talking to people about their stories, and thought, oh my God, this young woman who was, they thought she had bulimia, and they did unnecessary, they were rushing her in for all these unnecessary surgeries that they like stopped at the last moment. But you just realize that we all have really meaningful stories, and we've all been through a lot, no matter if you suffered a little or a lot from your celiac. But it's what sort of is the connective tissue that like gets us together. There's like, as soon as you meet another person with celiac, we have like sort of a shorthand of how we can communicate, because we've been through a bit of a shared experience, because we've used like lists like you make to go to restaurants, because we've all like experienced these awkward moments of like the deer in headlights from the waiter, or going someplace and thinking it was going to be one thing and finding out it was something else altogether, and having to take that bar that we sort of had in our pocket that was like is melting because it's been there all day, and have to eat that instead. But we've all been there, so it's a really amazing community. I mean, my other biggest takeaway from your question before is that I don't regret having celiac, because it's allowed me to meet amazing people like yourself. I feel like for better or for worse, my mission has become to, I mean, for better, to spread celiac, to help spread celiac awareness, and to help people who are suffering, and to sort of, I hope we live in a world eventually that is kind of normalized, whether you have celiac or gluten intolerance or another food allergy, that it's just understood, and that people you know that the world sort of understands it and embraces it, and doesn't see it as weird or different. Like, we're the same as everybody else. We just have to eat a certain way.
Exactly. I mean, I couldn't agree more. And I think it's relatable in the sense that we all have those frustration moments. We all remember exactly what happened when we were diagnosed and told, and like it's overwhelming. And I still talk to people that, and it's fine, like not judgment, but they're not grateful for celiac. They're not happy about it. They're not there yet, and that's okay too. My hope is that people eventually get there, because I can only speak for myself, but I talk to amazing people all the time that have had their life just so transformed for the good. Like, once they got over that hump of how hard it is, how overwhelming it is, how isolating it feels, like once you kind of get over that hump and you learn and have the skills in your toolkit to, advocate for yourself, figure out how to eat, all those things, like it can be really wonderful.
Exactly. Well said. I mean, I've met people who have family members who have it, and they won't get tested because they feel like, well, it's too hard to live that way. And I just, like, the day I got diagnosed was the last day I knowingly ate gluten. And I feel like it was that moment that I started to get my life back, and just being able to like have a dietary change and not be on any sort of high powered medications and stuff. We do have a lot to be thankful for in that way. And I think with all the amazing research that's going on, because I think we're finally being noticed. Celiac is finally, there's the medical community is finally waking up. Great things are happening, and I think it couldn't be a better time to be living and have celiac, because let's face it, the food, even 10 years ago when I was diagnosed, the choices were really, really thin. Um, I can go to a number of restaurants. I feel like I'm treated well because there's a greater understanding for the most part. There's still places that suffer, but I seek out places like you write about that are really on it. And so I feel like I'm really lucky to be living now, and I feel like the community has risen up and we're right like being heard. And I think I know that Celiac Awareness Month is about to end, but I think because of people like you and hopefully and things like the podcast, I feel like Celiac Awareness Month is every month for us. So let's just keep it going. I love that you're doing this, and I love, that we're all sort of together and united, I think, as a community to help get celiac out there and to really support the people who are suffering. Because still the diagnosis rates still boggle my mind how low it is. And so another thing that I hope to do, a long range thing, is really help re-educate the medical world with the documentary and other things. So we're working on that as well.
That's amazing because it is, I mean, there's still a ways to go, like for sure. I mean, I agree. I was diagnosed 8 years ago. Like we've come so far, I like people like Erin Smith. I mean, she was diagnosed years upon years ago. Like she was telling me, cause I had her on last week, she said her parents had to mail order her food when she
Right.
was young,
The
like,
Right. Yeah. Everybody I've talked to who was in that era, they knew these places in Canada they had to get the food from Canada, and it tasted kind of like sawdust or a brick, and that was relatively short time ago, in our history. So yeah, it's amazing how now you can go to any grocery store, and most major cities, find really good dedicated bakeries, things like that. It's just amazing. Yeah.
yes. And I agree, like every month is Celiac Awareness Month because we don't, you don't get to pick and choose. Like I love this month. Obviously, I've done a lot of interviews and been doing my best to spread awareness. I don't think I'm going to continue doing like 25 interviews a month, but I want to figure out a way to keep doing it because it's one of my favorite things. Like I love connecting with people. I love hearing stories. I love sharing resources. And I also I don't think there's ever too many, right? Like you could have a podcast and
Exactly.
12 other people could start a podcast tomorrow and it still would be like, okay, there's even more resources, more ways for it to go around because there's so many people living with celiac or gluten intolerance that need resources.
Exactly. Very, very well said. I think the more of us who are spreading the word, the more bloggers, the more podcasters, the better. Yeah, and it's amazing. And I forbid you from doing this every month just because we need you not to burn out. And you have to give me some Instagram lessons. Everybody who's listening, please friend me. I'm sort of late to the Instagram game. I like focus on Facebook and a bit on Twitter as well. And it was Erin Smith who actually, we were out in Indianapolis together. We were both at an expo together, and she's like, Michael, it's ridiculous. You have an Instagram account, but it's like you don't do anything on it. And so this was probably a year and a half ago. And Erin's always right. If you're out there, Erin, you're always right. No, she's usually right. But yeah. So I finally got into it because I'm seeing like there's a lot of people who are here on Instagram, like doing stuff. So I'm gonna spend more time, but you're like the sensei of Instagram. I'm very impressed with what you've built here and just doing this like live stuff, and the fact that this is the first time I'm doing Instagram live, and the fact that the people who were at the beginning that I was like watching one of her, I just, my wife told me not to be too self-deprecating. I tend to do that a little bit, but anyways,
It's a
hopefully not too much.
it's a learning process. And honestly, for me, like, I just, A, what, like, I think it's important to pick a platform that you like and that also has the attention, right? Like, you have to be in front of the audience and the people. And then the biggest thing I've learned about life and business, right, is like, it's just not about me ever. Like, I want to, in my like selfish days, I want to make it about me. It's not. It's like literally not about me at all. It's about everyone else. And so creating content, like figuring out what people want, and just it's a lot of trial and error. And so for me, like from day one, I've loved Instagram, even though in the beginning, like I had terrible photos. I didn't know what I was doing, but I just was like, there was something captivating about it. And so I've just kind of stuck with it. And now I feel like I'm in my groove and I've like created a community that I really like, but it's taken time.
Yeah, well, that's very cool, and you're right. It's like it is all about the community, and it is a lot of trial and error. Like you said in a wonderful post this morning, I love what you said. We're all works in progress, and I meditate as well. I love your point of view on so many things, and it's like uh, it's great that you just decided to jump in and you were gonna interview a bunch of people and just sort of put this out there because all we all want to do is connect with people to the most satisfying thing. And anytime that I get where I'm sort of feeling run down about the podcast or anything, I will get like an instant message or a note from someone or an email saying what the podcast means to them, or that it allowed them to have the courage to do this or that or the other thing. And that's why I do this. It's really just to so everybody can sort of be like what I was saying. Normal is, I want everybody to have a normal existence, and I feel like a lot of people initially said that it wasn't until you and Cam started talking about the fact that sort of the advocating for oneself, like a lot, like we talk about being in these awkward situations, and like you have, don't don't eat that piece of cake just to make Aunt Sally happy or whatever. You gotta sort of handle it in a way that's not going to hurt her feelings, but those are teachable moments and times that the people who love you aren't going to want you to be sick. So for me, it's all about educating and trying to make people feel not so alone, and like that we're all kind of in this boat together. And
Absolutely. Absolutely.
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
what else do you want people to know about the documentary, the podcast, about you, anything else?
Um, so the documentary is out there. Uh, there's different screenings, different places. Hopefully in the future it's been on PBS locally in Chicago. We're hoping it's early now, but hoping for a national run. That's something that's hopefully in the works. The the podcast is every Wednesday. Go to Celiac Project. We have links to everything. If you're in the Chicago area, we're going to be in Schaumburg this weekend at the Nourish Festival. These are very specific things I'm giving you. I'm not giving you anything deep here.
That's okay.
But what else do you want to know, Carrie?
I don't know. Do you know Julie? It's a Wheatless
Do
Life.
I?
Do you know
Oh, of
Julie?
course.
She just jumped on.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I figured.
Yes. Hey,
She-
Julie. Big.
Chicago
We're friends.
people,
Yes.
I figured as
Yes. We're
much,
gonna.
but
Yes. We're gonna see each other at in Schaumburg. And Julie was so nice. She said, if you need any help at the booth, she's going to be blogging from there. Thank you, Julie. We might just take you up on that. So thank you. Yeah, Julie's awesome. Yeah, it's just what else? Everything. It's really been a fun experience to sort of uh, see how this has all grown. Like I said, I when I met Cam, I had never even listened to a podcast, and so um, it's very cool that it was like meeting him, the alchemy of meeting him after the film was done, because I knew, like I said, I wanted to keep things going. um it's felt like the right medium to like discuss all these topics. So it's been a lot of fun, and I feel very blessed to have met him and to have gotten that going. And it's yeah, that's it's all been a fun ride.
Well, you guys do a fantastic job. Everyone needs to go listen. And if you
Thank you,
have
Carrie.
questions, what's the easiest way for people to get in touch with you?
So email me at info@celiacproject.com. You can always send me. I'm very active on Facebook. As Carrie will tell you, I'm working on Instagram. Like, everybody can send me their Instagram tips. I feel like I have to sit down and read a book on Instagram. I'm not kidding, Carrie. You're gonna have to be my guru for Instagram. So yeah, so you can send me a message on Facebook, Twitter. We're on all those things, and yeah, info@Celiac Project gets a direct line to me. So that's that's
Awesome.
how we roll.
Awesome. Well,
Excellent.
thank you so much. It's fun to be on
Thank you,
the
Carrie.
reverse because I know you interview people all the time. So to get to interview you is
Yeah,
really fun.
this is fun. I was a little nervous about it. I was like I said, I'm used to, like, my wife said, well, because you like to be in control of everything, and this is so much fun. You can interview me anytime, and I love what you're doing, Carrie. Keep up the great work.
Thanks, Mike. Oh, thanks, Julie. You're so sweet.
Okay.
All right. I
Yeah.
will
Thanks,
talk to you
Julie.
soon. Oh, thanks,
Okay.
Olivia.
Take care.
Okay.